We are live. Welcome back. It's been a hot minute because I was sick last week and had a kid sick. So,
Yes, and it is true that our friends all joke that like we have to sacrifice something to the gods in order to do this. So.
knock on wood, today we're not sacrificing anything. I'm just.
Yeah, I hope not. I mean, there's only so many sacrifices I'm allowed to make, and
I know.
in a certain type. So we'll see.
I feel like we should introduce ourselves again, though. I'm JM Guilfoyle. That's why I publish under, but everyone calls me Jen because that's my name.
I'm Ansley Ashe, which I go by Ansley Ashe Mysteries all over Substack and everywhere you can find me branded, and occasionally Jen will slip up and call me by my real name, but we're trying not to use that.
Trying so hard. Trying so
Trying
hard.
too hard. But yes, it is a pen name.
It is.
Okay, I have my tea mug here, which is like the lovely heart for Valentine's Day that my husband got like a couple years ago. And I have water today. I didn't bring the tea. Oops. But you have tea. You have interesting tea. That's what we're
I
talking
have
about.
iced tea. Well, I have iced tea in here, but not the iced tea you think of. It's iced chai. But I also have the tea because I wanted to talk. So, like, first of all, it's Women's History Month, and I feel like ever since certain things have happened around us, things like Black History Month were barely talked about, and I feel like I see nothing about Women's History Month. So, like, I feel like this was a great topic to talk about because it's timely because it's Women's History Month, but also it's important because I think a lot of people. I'm gonna make that go away. I think a lot of people don't think about this. So, like, I was talking. So part of this came up because I was talking with my daughter who is 7. She's in elementary school, and we were essentially talking about feminism, and how there's a lot of like men who will be like, "Well, no, because you're a woman." Like, there's a lot of things that are just no because you're a woman, or like the various aspects of that. And I remember being a kid and being told like, or like being fearful to go into things like a GameStop, right? Because that was a guy's space. And I feel like there can be that feeling in the publishing industry because like romance gets written off like, oh, you read romance. And like whether it's like erotic romance or not, like I feel like it gets written off no matter what. And so these were the numbers I want to start with. How much do you think what's the top industry in book publishing? Are you
But I
there?
don't remember by how much.
What was your answer? Because you
My
were,
internet connection is unstable. Am I here?
yeah, your internet connection is unstable. You're kind of here and there.
I'm here and there. I'm sorry, guys. I can't really change that. I can't. We're still working. We're gonna work my technical issues. My husband watches us. He works during the day, but he watches us after we post these lives. And he's still everything on us. So I do know that it's romance, but I don't remember by how much.
It is romance, and the last numbers I could find, I don't know if these are 2023 numbers. Romance erotica made $1.44 billion. The next the next highest is, can you take a guess what it is?
In genre, probably mystery.
It is mystery. It is mystery, but do you
Mystery or
know
fantasy.
how different it is? It's gross, and again, I think these are 2023 numbers.
Like half.
728 billion, or million, sorry, million with an M.
Yeah.
So like half.
So less than 10%. Yeah, half.
Like
Half.
half.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Half.
And then after that is religious inspirational, which is almost there with crime mystery. And then science fiction fantasy, which I tend to write, is 590 million. Like it is wild to me because so many people write off romance, but romance literally outdoes like everything. And it's got such a, and it's for women. And so that's why I wanted to talk about romance, because like I think it's a fascinating subject that like.
If you take James Patterson's masterclass on like how to write or whatever, he says if you're a smart writer, you will write for women because they're most likely readers. He's like, everybody thinks because I'm a guy, I write male characters and I write mystery. Most of my readers are male, but they're not. They're female. So,
Yeah.
women read. Who knew? who knew that those of us who went to school and enjoyed it were going to grow up to be readers? I mean, that seems like a crazy thought. It makes like, duh, it makes sense.
Well, and like neither of us. This is what's fascinating. Neither of us write spicy romance that I know of. You don't write spicy. I don't write spicy for sure.
Anymore,
Um,
anymore, anymore.
anymore. But it's fascinating to me because like a lot of romance kicked off. I mean, like obviously romance was around before this, but like a lot of romance kicked off in like the major industry because of Harlequin Industries, right? Or Harlequin Enterprises. And like you and I probably remember when like Harlequin romances were like in the grocery store. And like reading the history about it, it's fascinating because like a woman did take over for her husband when her husband died for Harlequin romance. Now, she didn't initially want the more spicy stuff. A guy that was part of like one of the other publishing presses um did read something that was on the erotic side and like was like, no, this is, and like they focus test groups and stuff, and that was like the thing that people wanted. But like they were like, hey, where should we put it? We should put it where women are, in the grocery store. Which, okay, not like the greatest thing now, but like the brain cells there are being used, and like yes, like that's what you want to do, right? Like to get it out there. And it's so interesting that we like downplay like, oh, you write romance, oh, you read romance, but like it is literally by double the top earner in publishing. um and I think that it's something to be discussed, right? Like because
Well,
we have so many
yeah,
different, right? Like we have your romantasy, your standard romances,
all the ones that I read, my Regency.
which of
Oh,
course because
look,
of the Bridgerton show, like have skyrocketed.
I do own Bridgerton books, but I have promised, like, so for my audience, they'll know this. I'm joining Killer Kaelin's pop culture playground. So when the next Bridgerton comes out, because she and I both own like several Bridgerton, several Julia Quinns, we're gonna do a whole thing on Julia Quinn. So I didn't pull my Julia Quinns for you. Um,
Although I do need to read, I real like I read some of the Bridgerton and stuff. I'm just saying in general, like it's gone up because of the Netflix series.
oh
But
yeah,
like Julia Quinn also has some newer contemporary romances too.
yeah. I don't know if I've read any of those yet, but I do love me and Julia Quinn.
Yes.
And then so yeah, so like yeah, but all of this is spicy, spicy. This one is a modern romantic suspense, and then this lady right here, I love so many of her books. I was flooded out when my son who's 17, when he was like 6 months old, we had this really big flood. I lost like every book I had by her, so this is the only one that I have left. Um, this
Oh,
one was contemporary at the time when she wrote it. But I think this is like in the mid 80s, but it might be the mid 90s. Um, and actually going back and reading this as an adult instead of like a college student. Um, Although I think I was in high school the first time I read this. I quit reading romance because I went back and I was like, oh, I don't really want to be influenced by any of these tropes. That's why I quit writing romance and why I quit reading it. Oh, it's 2003, so this would have been one of the last ones. So this book is 20 years old. But the Someone to Watch Over Me, I was like, oh no, I am not, oh, so me, not manified. Don't need a man to watch over me. This is not what I want. But it is a fantasy that's like fun in the thing. And this one is romantic suspense, which my sister gave to me. My sister still reads tons of romances. Still sends them to me. Knows what I do and do not like. But yeah, it's like, yeah, we're
I
just not.
I do think it's interesting. So like what, like for you, like what appeals in the romances that you read that you like?
So I think, so I read a ton of Regency romance, right? And I think honestly, I'm like just strongly bonded to Jane Austen, so I'm attracted to things that are set around the Jane Austen times. And it's kind of an intellectual comparison to me, like how it's represented. But I do read really spicy stuff too. So the spicy stuff was kind of like when I was in college, it was just kind of this escape. Like I do all this like really intellectual work, and then it's like, oh, some sex on the side. Mostly my husband, who was my boyfriend, he's my college sweetheart. We had a long distance relationship for quite a while. So he graduated college and then he went on to get his master's degree. and we were 3 hours apart. So like, yeah, needed a spicy romance to kind of get through.
I mean, fair.
Like I
Fair.
was like, because like he's a good guy. And then these other ones like the romantic suspenses, Feed My Mystery, because I've always been into mystery. I still read mystery. For those of you who are keeping track at home and know that like I check books out of the library, these are my next three. And I'm still in the Come Armageddon, which we did like the first time we went there because I was about to start it. Yeah, I'm not quite done with that book yet. It's just taking forever to read, but yeah, those are my next three. So like that's next week's reading. And I have to check books out. Don't know if Jenna's like this, but I have to check books out of the library because I legit read 2 or whatever books a week. Speaking of my husband, he has just walked into the door to say hi to the dogs.
It's okay.
My,
I heard my husband like up the hallway. I'm like, he's gonna totally open this door and it's gonna be
wait,
super
yeah, this
embarrassing
is
because we're
this
on
is where your
live.
life yeah. This is where your life and my life are so similar because both of us have husbands who work from home. They have like those desk jobs.
And the
So
dogs.
yeah.
The
And
dogs
the
also
dogs,
pay
and the
attention.
dogs, the dogs who keep us honest. And you're like, hey, is it a live stream? Yes, it's a live stream. You can hear our dang dogs.
Right? This isn't Zoom. It probably doesn't filter out the dogs barking or whatever. Um, yeah, see, and like I read like the other kind of like I prefer the other types of romance that are on the not spicy side, which is fascinating because those are the ones that are harder to find because marketability wise, like they're not what the mainstream wants. And you tend to find even like in like Target and Walmart. Walmart still has like what I would consider your classic Harlequin section, by the way. So they're harder to find because like I feel like I've gotten like I feel like the genre has changed, right? Because you used to be able to tell like what the spicy books were based off of the cover, and you still kind of can depending on like the cover, but like
Whether or
some
not
of them
it
have
had
gone to the
Fabio
more
on the cover,
discreet. What?
when it had Fabio on the cover, you knew exactly how spicy it was.
Yes, but now I feel like I've been lulled into like thinking like these cutesy covers with like the kind of like animated like cute like whatever are gonna be like a sweet romance, and like no they are not. Like I have now realized like the majority of like romance things that I find at like Target I cannot read because there are all these like cutesy things because I don't prefer the spice. Like I am very much like the K drama, like, oh my god, they finally held hands or finally kissed in like the 15th episode, then they're each an hour long, like
Okay.
give me that all day long.
So speaking of Jane Austen, not gonna lie, the latest what was it, Emma? The one with the latest Emma on like Netflix with Anna Taylor Joy or whoever it was when she was playing Emma, right? My very favorite part about this book, right? Because like you get to the end of an Austen and like the thing they're gonna do is kiss, because apparently Austen knew nothing else, right?
Mhm.
And I love it. You get all the way to the end of the movie and they're gonna kiss, but instead of kissing, she get like they're just there at that moment and she gets a nosebleed. And I was like, yes, that is very Austen. That is very funny. And that is you and it ruins the moment, but it doesn't ruin the relationship. And I personally love that. I would
Yes.
read that if I were still reading romance, but yeah, not reading romance, so I don't know.
I mean, I would read that like I would that would be like the top of my like freaking like love pile.
I was like, that's just such a great take. That's such a great twist on like what you expect is coming. That was just a great twist. Okay,
Well, it
so
also feels very much like anime, right? Like, cause like there's like the whole like nosebleed thing, like when there's like somebody crushing on somebody else or whatever because of increased blood flow. um, but like it came up actually too, like in the anime group I'm in on Facebook and stuff. Like, why are like romance animes not like those top anime? I mean, like there are like a few here and there, but it feels like romance keeps getting squashed down. I don't know. What do you have like a take on that or
I I think that romance is popular because it's women focused, and I feel like people don't want to admit that they like what they like, right?
right?
I mean, I think it's kind of the same thing as like like women have romance and men have other things, visual things
Yep.
that they do, and nobody admits that they watch the visual things, you know? No men that I know admit that they do it. But, like, it's a billion-dollar industry as well. So, like, I think we just are not honest as a society about sex, sexuality, what sells, what doesn't sell. And I think really honestly, there's escapism in this. So, it's like what it's kind of idealizes certain types of relationships, and then I think also, they're character driven. Like, I don't understand. If I don't understand romance authors who plot their novels. I don't. I have to plot a mystery novel because external events dictate the pace of the book, right? And it's the
You're talking
intellect
to
of
like a plotter though. Like I absolutely plotted my romance.
um well, I'm just gonna say, like, personally, I don't understand it because I don't understand because, like, it's so much that character dynamic. But I
Yeah.
mean, the other stuff, it's the character dynamic, right? Like, you have like who is the guy and who is the girl, and like you show up and like who are they and what are their conflicts and what are they doing and how are they doing this and blah blah blah. Like, and I guess I understand the romance writers who pants them more than I understand the plotters, because I don't understand what external events are going to affect your character when they're in a relationship because it should be everything that's internal to the relationship. There might be external pressures that come out there, but it is their understanding between each other that kind of builds things up. And I once you understand structure well enough, I do understand people who do it. But I love your work, so like don't I love your work. So like
That's fair.
my
I
person,
don't I don't think you've read Christmas Confessions yet, so it's fine.
yeah, that's maybe true too. We'll
Um,
see.
I do think like the one thing that I feel makes a romance better, and it's the thing that I find in, let's say, like K dramas and like your anime romances and stuff that are not um overtly about like the sex, is like making that well-rounded character, like you were talking about with the relationship, right? Like there's something about the relationship and the character dynamics and like having like characters that care about each other, that like love each other or are getting into a relationship and learning about each other, but like the nuances of those characters because it is character driven. And I feel like um it is hard for me to find romances that I like will explicitly be like, yes, you need to read this, because I feel like sometimes I'm lacking that, like yeah, it's a cute story, like it's a meet cute, which is really like, like a meet cute with like some misunderstandings, but I don't necessarily always feel like I have like a huge connection to the characters because they're not well rounded, right? Like, oh, like yeah, this character is cool and they're like a baker and stuff, but like and they're maybe like klutzy or whatever, but like I don't feel like I know the character. Excuse me. And I feel like when you get the like longer, um even like the slow burn and stuff, the relationship dynamic is much more developed and it evolves naturally, and that like appeals to me. And like it's interesting, like when you watch like content creators that talk about like the things that women like and stuff, and like, oh, like if you're a guy, like yeah, like a woman doesn't necessarily need you now because it's like, oh, like women can do things, right? Like we can own houses and have good jobs and whatever. um you need a personality, and sometimes I feel like that's what I need like in those books, and like sometimes it's hard for me to find, um because I'm not just looking for the sex portion of it, right? Like I want like that relationship, I want that like connection. And that slow burn really for me like gets you that connection better, if that makes sense.
I like it. I like that take on it, and I do understand why you have. So how do you, if you're in the Target, Walmart, grocery store, picking out your next romance? I had a trick that I did for all of mine. What is your trick for yours? How do you just choose it?
I don't have a trick, and that's the problem. Like I'll be like, oh my god, like I'll be like, Katie, look at this book that I picked up. She's like, that's gonna be so spicy, and I'm like, dang it, you're right. And I'm so bad at it sometimes. Uh, so like my thing is if it's obviously, so first of all, it's by section. Like I can kind of tell based on where it is, right? And theoretically, if it's in the YA section, it's not going to be super spicy. I do tend towards the YA. But if it's in the adult section, sometimes I just go in with the knowledge that like it's going to be spicy, and I'm just going to skip those parts. Sometimes that's
Um,
what I do.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
What's your
Okay,
trick?
so this is what I when I was yes, this is what I would do. So I would take so many of them off the shelves. So I would look at the cover and I
Mhm.
would see what was on the cover. This tells me it's a Regency. And that can't possibly that's got to be a pen name. I was like, ooh, that's a great pen name. Um, so I like, is it a pen name? Is it a real name? I don't know. I figured this is a pen name, and though I think I found out later this might be a real name, but that is a Father is a great pen name. It's like, oh yeah, dogs. The next thing I do is I read the back blurb to see whether or not there's a dynamic. This is going to be an enemies to lover right here. And the next thing that I do is I wanted to check my spice level. If it's a highly spicy novel, we open it up, we hit the halfway, there should be a sex scene halfway through. And if it's not there, it's going to be within a couple of pages. What do you know? 10 pages later, we have the sex scene. Um, and then we read a little bit of that. Is it good? Do they know what they're doing? If they don't know what they're doing, that one goes back on the shelf and we pull the next one out.
I
And
mean,
we
that's
look and we
fair.
see what it is. um, and if it didn't have a sex scene in the middle, then we skip to the end to see like, am I reading up to like the kiss? So like I read the end of the books all the time. I'm such a bad reader. Um, but I was reading the end of the book all the time to see like where is this thing gonna end? You know, like is this like at a wedding? What are we doing? Um how, where is this going to end? And I would just like flip through it real fast, like just flip through it real fast, and see. And if it was a kiss, then I would go back and I would read that blurb again, and I would see like what the dynamic is, and then I might read like I don't know the first couple of pages, and if I liked it, I would buy it, and if I didn't like it, back on the shelf it goes.
Mhm.
So yes, I basically stood in my local drugstore, um, and took every book off the shelf and I could spend 30 minutes there choosing just one $5 book to read because I'm that old. That's how much books cost when I had disposable money to do that. And I went like I didn't have more than that because $20 was all I got for an allowance. So I was only buying one book a month. Also, read 2 books a week. One book a month is what I could afford to purchase. See where the library comes in, right?
Hence the library. Yes. Yeah. No, that makes sense. To be fair, I also hit up half price all the time. So like you'll see like I'll have like my half price stickers because I'll buy them used all the time.
Fair enough. Fair
Um,
enough. I didn't get into used books until, like, much later when, like, my budget was still $5, but,
yeah.
it was $5 the other month, so, like, then and books were more expensive, so then I got into the used bookstores.
Yeah. And
So,
I
yeah.
do realize like America, like we're kind of in the middle, I think, on pricing. Like we're not the lowest for pricing. We're definitely climbing in what, the average price of books are. Um, but it doesn't help like cost of printing is going up and like then you're getting things like, oh, these special editions where you get like the airbrushed edges and the hardcover and stuff. Like it becomes, it's a lot of money. Um, as an author, we know that it's a lot of money to put out a book.
Yes, it is. It's a lot of money, and honestly, the number one thing that I think of, as, a self-published author, and I am looking to bring, like, actual print books. And this gets into a little bit of so my readers know, but we're gonna let Jen's readers know. I'm co-founder and co-organizer of Grace Like Author Fest, which is a book festival that has a big, huge book market at it every single summer. And so I am interested. So as a self-published author, I want to have physical books to sell. I didn't create a festival just to not have a physical book to sell. I mean, that seems crazy. But I do want to be able to, and I am genuinely a bibliophile, right? Like I own books because I read them. You should see like these are my look they're beat up, right? Like it's beat up.
Mhm.
It's beat up. And this one a little less so, but it's beat up, right? These books, these books. This one probably needs to go to my sister because I'm sure she hasn't read it yet. But look at the spine on that.
Oh no,
Look at.
I'm like that too. The part of the reason I purchase my books as opposed to like always taking them out from the library is exactly what happened. I have a manga that I took out from the library and it got spilled on, and they're like,
Geez.
you have to purchase a new copy. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah, and then you're out like the full price of the books, right?
Well, they
So
gave it
yeah,
to me at least, the one I spilled on.
yeah, that's true. They will. Whereas like these, and then of course you have like the cute. This is the thing. Like you got to learn how to like to put like the little cellophane covers on them if you're gonna keep them and whatever.
You're so I
So
do not do that, but like I have books downstairs like from like 30,
well,
35 years ago. I will say like I don't do that, but like I do tend to beat up my books, especially if I start taking them places with me, which is why I don't like also like taking stuff out from the also I'm like really slow. Like I'll start a book and like 90% of the time I will put it down for like 6 months. That means I can't just take it out because I can't have it out for like 6 months.
very true, very true. If you're gonna put it, although I would advise, as a library trustee, at least for the next few weeks, until my term expires, as a library, what I would is like if you read it and you like it, but you're like, okay, well, like I'm kind of out of that book, just return it back to the library. You can reserve it and check that thing out again when you're ready
Yeah.
to pick it back up.
Or like I've taken out books and like started reading them and if I like them enough then I will purchase them myself. Um
Oh, that's cool.
like I did that with like the Zachary Yang book. I thought that was like really good. Like I still haven't finished it, but like it's on my very, 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 very long TBR. I will say I think it's interesting how with like romance especially we're starting to see like all these like special editions. Like I feel like Fourth Wing had like I don't know how many special editions. And I realize that's on the spicy side. I really want to read it, but like I because I love dragons and I love dragon riders and I don't like spice. And I'm just like, I need something that doesn't have that, but it has the dragon. I know there's other books. But anyways, so like the airbrushed edges being like I know there are self-published authors that do that. I don't know how you get that done. But then like, oh my god, like this one was a special edition with like this full art inside. Gorgeous. But I also know like
Yeah,
getting
I aspire to be that rich to be able to hire artists. Screw screw figuring out how to get it published. I just aspire to be rich enough to hire an artist to do that. I will figure out how to physically get that thing published once I'm rich enough to like hire an artist. I am not yet that rich. And
I know. I mean,
and
like, I feel like I could do the like formatting part of it. Like that part doesn't scare me as much as the cost of like hiring an artist to do it because like the like I know like the artist to do that and be able to have the publishing rights for it is like a lot. Like a lot.
and artists deserve and artists deserve it. Artists deserve that money.
Mhm.
And then we're gonna run into the other side of this problem. I have a friend whose parents were both art professors, and so her main take on art is like the thing that she loves most about art is that everybody gets an opinion and nobody's opinion is wrong. And I was like, oh, that's sweet. And then I was telling her, I was like, I want to buy art from living artists to put on my walls. And I was like, and it's not that any of the art that I want, I think is a bad price for the art. But I want artists whose canvases are like $5,000, $6,000. And she's like, yeah, because what you like is good, right? So it's just like nobody's bad at art, but on the other hand, what Melanie likes is good. Like I have like incredibly high standards, and so I would so like in addition to all of the additional things to get that that illustrator and I'm going to be paying them for the quality of their work, and like it's going to be just superlative work because I'm not going to get why would you get somebody who would not care? This is
Yeah.
how I feel. Like I want them to care about their art and that visual that I'm sending to them as much as I cared about how much I wrote it.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I'm actually really excited. Have you seen the cover? I know you weren't in it, but have you seen the cover for the anthology for the our writing group? Last year's anthology?
Seeing that cover, I feel like it was attached to an email.
It
I
probably
feel like it was
was.
attached to an email that I have. I don't know. I'm so busy at the moment until April 1st. I am so busy,
I know
so
you are.
busy. I'm like not hardly even reading any emails. I'm like, Aw, that one will wait. That one will wait. I feel like it was there in an attachment. So
It
that's a
probably
steamy.
was. It looks so good, and we did hire an artist. So like we don't always have the money to hire an artist, but this year we hired an artist to do the cover, and it is so good. It's gonna be beautiful. It's probably gonna be like the best of like the Journey anthologies. Like I'm very excited for it. Which is fascinating because it won't be within that top tier of what sells because it's like 90% fantasy and not romance, it's action adventure. So
Yeah, but your book is but the anthologies for the group are always quirky, and I am going to be in next year's, I don't know.
this year's
However, this year's edition. There's a squirrel. My dogs are chasing a squirrel. They just ran downstairs to go bark at a squirrel outside of my house.
I mean, yeah, that happens all the time. Squirrels are the arch nemesis, and our dogs. They live in a. We have a couple that live in the trees in our backyard, and they are my dog's arch nemesis. So
Like, oh,
yeah, I get it. But like back to romance and stuff. I feel like we should come full circle before we end it. What is I don't know, what other takes do you have on the like romance genre and stuff? Like I find it fascinating that when you go to a bookstore, I think like the romance section is like well maybe besides YA. And now well
I,
if you go to a big enough store, manga is pretty much
yeah.
taking off.
So in my lifetime, I feel like romance used to be like the biggest section, right? And I
Yeah.
feel like romance is now split between romance and YA. Like there's just been this explosion of YA in the last 25 years, I would
Yeah.
say. Like definitely Harry Potter, the Harry Potter series, love or hate J.K. Rowling. Um, and I'm not particularly a fan. I've read all of the Harry Potter series, but I'm not particularly a fan of J.K. Rowling. Um, Love or hate her work, she was on the leading edge of that. I don't know how much like the Harry Potter books just selling and selling and selling kind of pushed YA forward, especially as they grew older.
Mhm.
But I feel like YA is kind of really taking over that. And to me, that is interesting because I feel like I was growing up, romance is where authors would take risks, right? And sure, the sex was the thing that would sell, but like Judith McNaught has some very complicated characters. I love her work. Joanna Lindsay, some very complicated characters. Sandra Brown, this is a complicated mystery setup with some really good characters, right? And so like and I think they were very character driven and I think they were very but that's where the risks were being taken and not as much so in like say the golden age of mystery where risks were being taken on like plot structures and devices and things like that. And the intellect. And also like there's less literary work that's coming out, I feel,
Yeah.
um, recently. And so YA was this thing where like there was a group of readers, especially so I'm an Xer. I'm on the younger end of the Xers, and my youngest sibling is like a Zennial. So like right there on
Yeah. So like
the
me, because
changeover, my
I'm
sister.
on that cusp of Gen X and millennial. I'm a Zennial with the X, not the
Yeah.
Z.
Um, right. So the Zennials, and so I feel like the Zennials and the Millennials, like really, they were a huge group of people, and they became YA at like this moment in time. And authors were like, okay, well, yeah, I know what to do here. And if you weren't interested in writing sex scenes, which like fair enough, like they're hard to do, like they're just really hard to do.
Unless you read fanfic, because
Well, I
fanfic
mean,
seems to get it all the time.
Chewbacca, come on. Yeah, he's not gonna listen. But and they were like, okay, well, I don't have to write a sex scene. They can be really, really hard to write, difficult to write. Love the dog. He really is a very sweet dog. He just really hates squirrels.
I
Um,
think that's fair.
he's a Yorkie, so like, there's no changing his mind. He's gonna go kill that squirrel. Um, so if you didn't want to write sex scenes, but you did want to write a love story, at YA, you know exactly where it's going to be, right? Like, because the most they're going to do is like hold hands and kiss, and like you're not going to go over that line of like, what is it?
Well,
Like, it's going to be sweet, it's
except
going
for
to be
now, we
wholesome,
have the
and if
problem of in the industry, there are some YA books that are having those explicit scenes, and really you're getting the readership pushing back and being like, hey, this is not YA. Like, we get like you've got younger characters that are maybe near adulthood, but like this is not a YA, like a place for it. Like I remember
Right.
one of my friends would get like those book boxes, and like it was like a book box and it had like a YA book, but it was spicy, and then the stuff they included in it was like not appropriate for YA level readers. And like then you start getting the pushback, or like you get some art like this, but like on the spicier side. And like it was, it was hard because it's that
It
division that
does.
we need, right? Like we need a YA, but we also need like something between maybe that and like your like standard romance, like a new adult. Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, and well, but I think I think the YA space, because if you like those, they're interesting characters at an
Yeah.
interesting moment in your life, right? And if you're not interested in writing, and like if you think about who the target audience is, right? But then because it's interesting, adults are interested in it, right? And so like maybe the adults got into some of the YA because like especially it's like my son, like all the stuff he like, my son likes to read classic literature, so like I have already read everything that he wants to read. But when my oldest two were going through, they were Percy Jackson, Rebecca Yarros. Well, I mean that's spicier, but like Rebecca Yarros now. But there was Moss. What's her name? Stephanie Moss, Sandra Moss. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
love
Whatever.
Stephanie Moss. Yeah, I love her.
The Crown of
I
Thorns.
love,
Yeah.
yeah, Throne of
Crown of Thorns is the one we
Crown of
own.
Thorns. Yes, I like that. I'm not a huge fan of the other one. The other one with Faye.
Yeah, well, that's the one we own. But like,
Yeah.
yeah. So like I would like to read that. So like there was this space, right? And because Harry Potter was fantasy, and it had magic elements, like you could bring so much into it, right? And Percy Jackson was like the Greek gods.
Hmm.
And so like you could bring so much into that, right? And I feel like that fusion like could really catch the imagination. So if you were a creative author, this was the place, the YA was the place to go. And I think it just kind of opened up a lot more. So I feel like there's been the shift, maybe away from, but that YA has kind of taken up more of it. And I am not surprised to have the pushback. Part of the reason the adults read the YA is because if they're like you and they don't want to have the spicy stuff, YA's theoretical target demographic is not yet old enough to really they're old enough to understand it, old enough to read it, but the parents don't want them to, right?
Right. Exactly.
Because I think I started reading these spicier romances at like 14 or 15 years old. And I have blind parents, so I could get away with it. But like my parents, but like my friends' parents, like if they caught them with that stuff, they would be like, "Oh no!" So like it was, like smuggling my books into into my friends' houses, made me like a little bit popular at 14 or 15, maybe, because of the stuff I could get away with. But that's my take on the industry. Is like this is this is kind of what's changing, but it doesn't surprise me. Women like to read. I think honestly, I think a lot of women are like me. If you have kids, women who don't have kids tend to read because they like the intellectual stimulation, which is one of the reasons why I read. Right, I read in a wide variety of genres. I have, like, you've seen my mystery, you've seen my romances. Yeah, we're good. I have some super nerdy books on like economics, on the shelf right now. Um, I read fantasy stuff. So I read a wide variety of things. I think a lot of women that I meet fall into that category too. Like they have whatever they prefer to read, like be it romance, be it like you manga, is probably maybe the thing you're most passionate about. It's maybe not the thing you read the most. I don't know technically what you read the most. You read a lot. But
Probably
it
read
is
manga the most because it's quick. And Japanese light
and it's
novels. In fact, I've got one of my romance manga right here.
there we go. Right? Whether they read that, I know so many women who read fantasy, like they have like their preferred genre, but they don't stay in a genre because they want the intellectual stimulation. They want they either like read mystery for the intellectual stimulation and then a romance for the characters, right? I mean, I to get kind of a balance. So I get why women read a lot, and I think like for men, it just has not been a thing that they have been I want to say encouraged to do. I feel like books aren't written for what men want to read,
Right. Or
and I feel
they are, but like they're maybe those younger books, right? Like you're talking like the Percy Jacksons, which aren't really like meant for one gender or another. You're talking about like a more wide ranging audience. But even in those having, like a lot of ideals that are still like, like you've got like smart women, you've got Annabeth, or you've got your Hermione Grangers, where you've got your strong passionate women that are smart, and so they appeal, right, like so they appeal to a wide audience, because you're getting that minor romance of Annabeth and Percy, or Hermione and Ron, and Harry and Ginny. um they're in microdoses. It's interesting because, and this could be a whole different conversation, because things like anime, like shonen, which is mostly action adventure, um, will likely have like some minor romance in it, like most things do in life. And it's fascinating because like a lot of people are like, well, but like the romance is written so poorly because it's not really the focus of like the anime. And then you've got like the newer things like Dan Da Dan, which came out, which was huge and massive last season. And the author of that, it's like a shonen about like demons and stuff or whatever. But like the author wanted to have romance in it, and his, I don't remember, his publisher or his daughter or somebody was like, you have to read, and like had to read like 30 romance anime mangas that are like the top before he could write Don Da Don, and so he could get his romance in it right.
I
So
love an
that
author
you
that does their research.
so that you don't screw it up, right? So that you get like the guys that want the action, but then you get the romance in it as well. Which, by the way, like I think it's such a misnomer that like romance is just for girls, because like my husband will watch romance anime with me and like read like the like romancy like mangas and stuff. Again, I think it's because it's that character driven, but it's also like an insight psychologically into like how people act, right? Like there's a lot of like when you're talking about like a romance, especially in things like a slow burn where you're more focused on like a relationship building, it's a lot of psychology, which I think.
Yeah. And then at least for myself, I think the writing for men though it has happened traditionally in other places too as well.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, I feel like it was like things that guys were into. And I know this because I would see who was at the movie theater. All the movies I liked were where the guys all showed up. Because
Yep.
I like a violent movie. But I feel like the Die Hard movies, like all those action adventures, the Stallones, the Schwarzeneggers, the Terminators, like those things were written for guys. And then your
Well,
nerdier guys, like,
even like the Star Warses and stuff, right? Like,
right, right. And then your nerdier guys were into like Star Wars, Star Trek. I married a Trekkie, so like I love, like I was just in love with all of that's. And I feel like the stuff, that men were drawn into that thing, so they're drawn into visuals. And even now I think the writing for men tends to be in video games because they play a lot of video games. And with their friends. That's what my son does. That's, kind of what my husband is. He's
but
not like
fascinating is the storytelling though that are in those video games, because the
yeah,
storytelling isn't any different than writing a movie or writing a long form
right.
series, because if you're thinking about it, like a lot of those games are 80 plus hours. There's a lot of like storytelling though. Like I want to say like the cutscenes in like Jedi Survivor were something like 10 hours worth. That's
Yeah, I
that's a
mean,
season
it's a
of
lot.
television.
Yeah, right, 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 right. And so I just think men are like the writing that men are attracted. I think the reason why women read more than men is because the writing that men are attracted to has traditionally been, at least over my lifetime, in more visual mediums like movies and video games, and it has not been as into the writing, like, and I think Michael Connelly is a great writer, right? And his work, like, this is why Bosch does so well, right? Is because like, and I find his work to be very visual. Like I go through and I can visualize myself in there. His work is very visual, and Michael, so like the Michael Connelly, but I think like men have not been, maybe socialized is the right word, socialized to look for it in a book. They look for it in a movie, they look for it in a video game. And I wonder how much of that is their dad's fault, right? It's like their dads don't know to tell them to go read a book. My dad loved to read, so like my brother um does not play video. I mean, he does, but does not play video games the way my son plays video games.
Right.
My brother my so me, my brother, and my sister are all readers, and as a writer, I'm the one who reads the least among them. My siblings read somewhere between 100 and 150 books a year, and I'm like
I've
at
noticed
50.
this too, but is it because you spend your time writing instead of reading?
I think maybe that's fair. And then I
Because
think maybe
I've
the other
noticed
thing
for
that's
me,
fair,
like if I'm writing a ton, I don't have time to read because I'm writing the things, you know.
and I don't, and sometimes when I'm writing new work, I don't want to read because I don't
An
want Agatha
influence.
Christie's voice or Anne Perry's voice or Michael Conley's voice, um, or Joanna Lindsay's voice or somebody else's voice to be inside my work. And I'm kind of scared, like if I have that on my brain, I'm just going to unconsciously be parroting their patterns, and then I'm going to go back and read it, and it won't sound like me, and that makes it harder for me to edit in the end. I think maybe that's true. Um, I don't know, but also you crochet and I knit, and like I spent a summer 2 years ago. I read 50 books in an entire summer. I read and reviewed them for an entire summer, and that's what I did between Memorial Day and Labor Day. I read a book every other day, and I wrote up a little blurb about it, and rated it and put it on my website, on my blog, um, and checked them all out of the library. And, what I found is, like, reading that much, I did not have time for my knitting. I did
Yeah.
not have time for, like, my writing, other than the blog post. I didn't have time for anything else. And so, yes, I think maybe, like, when I'm writing, I maybe don't have as much time for it, but also I think, um I mean, I think I also like to do other things too, like knit, and it's a little bit more broad. Whereas
Yeah.
but also I'm a stay-at-home mom, right? So, like, I read for intellectual stimulation. My brother and my sister are both nurses. They read to, relax. Like, they've had a hard day at work. I know a lot of it. I mean, a lot of it, unfortunately, is like they see death routinely, several times a month in their jobs. And, you've had a bad day at work, and maybe somebody you didn't want to pass away, but they were so sick they did. You come home, you just want to escape into like something else, and they just read because it kind of winds down all those emotions. And
Okay.
wears your brain out.
So last thing, because we've probably been on for like a long time. I don't know how long we've been on.
So we don't set a timer.
We don't set a timer.
No,
So
no,
you were
but
mentioning like you were mentioning
I'm
though
almost
like men like maybe not passing it down, right? Like, and it's true, right? Because like my uncle was very proud of the fact that he had not read a book since high school. And he passed away a few years ago in his 80s. Um, and that he even in high school, like when he had to read books, like he wouldn't read the book, he would read like the classic comics version of something so that he didn't have to read the actual book. He was very proud of the fact that he didn't read. And my father got into reading when I got back into reading, which was again with the Harry Potter craze and stuff. So my dad reads some, but he never was like the person to be like, you should sit down and read. Um, what about like my husband, on the other hand, though, is a voracious reader. He reads way more than I do. Like he goes through over 100 books a year. What about your husband? Because now obviously, like I have 3 kids. They see dad reads a lot. They see mom reads some, but they know that I write and they sit down and write because of me.
advice.
Mm.
So, he's hit or miss. He's hit and miss. When we first started to date, so he reads mostly the Star Trek novels. He
Yeah.
reads mostly the Star Trek novels. And then, but no, he's not as much of a reader as I am.
Okay.
But I'm the one who does the reading with my kids or whatever. I also wonder how much of this is like, so dads don't pass it down. I wonder how much of it is. This is a lot of things because I've been a soccer coach, and a lot of dads are like really kind of like when they find out that I'm a novelist, they're like, "Oh, I'm teaching my kid to read," and they're like proud of that, and I'm like, "What do you read?" And they go, "Well, I had this teacher in high school." And I'm like, "Great." And they're like, and it's the required reading. And that teacher was a woman that they didn't get along with, and made bad grades. And then they think that reading is this chore. And that gets programmed into them somewhere in middle school and high school, because you have to read, and they have like all these elements that they have to do. And their teachers were not. This is not the teacher's fault, right? But they just didn't get along with those teachers. And I think a lot of men just found that, and because there are not as many men English teachers as there are women English teachers. The men the men go into math, they go into science, they go into physical education, right? Like they're not English teachers, and they're women English teachers. And if you get an English teacher with whom you have a personality clash because you are a young man and you're a teenager and your brain is broken, so that means that that teacher doesn't want you to talk back to her, but your brain can't shut you up. And that's when they fall out of reading.
Yeah. I mean, like, I will say, like, I was very ADHD as I am ADHD, right? Like, my kids get it from somewhere. And in high school, like, I could not read. I think in high school, I only finished like 3 or 4 novels. Like, and I would get A's and stuff. Like, I would maybe read 50 pages and I would get A's just from listening in class or whatever. Like, I was not good at reading. And I think like the thing that happens too is like you get like, even if you don't have that clash with, like, let's say a teacher, like if you have parents harping on you, well, you should read, well, you should read. I mean, how often do we listen to our parents? Like, oh, you should read.
Yeah,
Well, it's different though. Like, are they modeling that behavior, right? Like having parents that model the behavior of reading consistently and not for just a school reason. Like my kids, all three of them, like there's some of the few kids who complete like the like we still do like the one of the minor league baseball teams does like the reading challenge in the spring. My kids have already completed the 7 hours. They completed the 7 hours within like a couple weeks of getting the sheet. Like they still have a couple weeks left on the challenge. Like they completed it ages ago because they read half an hour a day anyways because they like to. Um, and I think like there's also that stigma too, like that gets passed down, and I think is loosening that things like manga and comics aren't reading, which doesn't
but they
help,
are.
right?
They are.
They
They
are.
are. That graphic novel that you're into, or that anybody out that's out there, I don't write them. My drawing is abysmal.
Yes, mine too.
Um, but no, like no, you're great compared to me. My drawing is abysmal. Um, but yeah, like that, it totally counts as reading, and like I have never particularly been snobby about that. So, and I don't understand people who are, but I understand it's a thing. Um,
Yeah, it is a thing. But then right, and like that stigma and like that passing of that stigma doesn't help when you're like, well, you should go read. Well, but I told you I'm into something and you're telling me that's not really reading. Like that behavior doesn't help either to pass on a generation of readers and like to get them back into reading, because I know like literacy rates are like so low, right? Like they're I don't want to say lowest they've ever been, obviously that's not true, but
but
like
the
there's
lowest
such a
it's been
decline in it.
But it's the lowest it's been in, like, almost 200 years, right?
Yeah,
Like, since the printing press really got up, and, like, Victorian England had something like a 96% literacy rate, and some of that is just how lurid those, headlines were. Oh, we just, like, we could do this forever, like, we have to learn how to shut up.
we do have
Um,
to learn how to shut up.
but you
I
asked
think
about
that this was a
modeling.
fantastic topic though
It is. You said something about modeling, and so I will just leave them with this. My father did read, and he modeled this. My mother is totally blind. My dad is legally blind. He could see well enough to read, but like it looked really weird because he could only see out of the corner of his eyes. And because my mother was an English major in college, an English lit major, she wanted to be a high school English teacher. My dad would pick out books, and so they'd read a book he wanted to read and books she wanted to read, and he would just read them like every night to my mom. That was like their winding down time. Is they would read and narrate the books so over and over and over again. So that I think, I mean, they didn't tell me you had to read; they just did the reading, and the reading was for them, and it was this experience. So also I know people get upset about like audiobook readers, but like it does count. It counts. Listen to an audiobook. Like if you don't really want to read, and it's a completely different experience because those actors are so good. We're going to talk about this forever. This is why.
we probably have to go. There's probably things that have to get done, and you don't want to hear us talk for hours. Well, maybe you do want to hear us talk for hours. I don't know. Um,
If
but
you want to hear us talk for hours, you have got to start putting I comment, commenting on the Substack, commenting on our YouTube. Wherever you see these videos, you make it all the way to the end, put us a comment and go like, "I made it to the end and I want more." That's what
Yeah.
we need to hear.
Are
Alright.
we planning to do this next week or are we going to every other week?
We're going to every other week because, my
Because you
friend,
yeah.
Kaylin Williamson does Pop Culture Playground. She also wants to live stream. I am incredibly busy and I just can't do 2 live streams a week.
That's fair.
Um, Fair enough. But also it seems like, but and also, like, it's kinda stressful in your life and it's kinda stressful in my life, so
I may go live next week, and maybe play test something like a solo RPG because I'll be putting out
that would be so
a
much fun. If I'm not doing my own live stream at that time, I'm gonna watch you. So,
okay.
like, this is not a thing you have to do with me. This is a
I
thing.
know it's
This is
not. Yes, no, I know. I thought it'd be fun to do like a because I'll be putting out an article next week on solo RPGs and the hedgehog
some
one that I've been playtesting. So like I don't know that I'll do the playtest on that one. I may do the playtest like I'll maybe can continue my Curious Creatures one.
that sounds fun
So
too.
but yeah. And then
Yeah,
yeah.
so just so our viewers know, this is our regular Zoom lunch.
Yep.
Once a week we try to do a Zoom lunch, and now we're just bringing your Zoom lunch to you over a cup
But
of
with
tea.
tea. But
But
with
with
tea.
tea. I am done with my cup. Are you done with your cup yet?
I just finished it. Ha!
All right. So tea
That
is
means
done.
it's time to go.
That's us. All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye everyone.